Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. On the day of the car accident and miscarriage, the hospital called my husband. But when the call connected, a man's deep, ambiguous voice came through. "Darling, have a baby for me. I only want one from you." Soon after, his secretary took the call, her restrained tone laced with pride. "President Jen had too much to drink. Madam, please don't take offense. If there's anything you can tell me." I touched my flat stomach and said calmly, "Then please tell him to come and divorce me first before making babies. The time for pain has long passed." Signing that informed consent form for the induced abortion was a relief for both me and this child. When I first found out, I was overjoyed. I thought I could use this child to keep Tobias Jen. But only now have I come to realize that if I can't provide him with a healthy and loving family, then as a mother, I simply don't deserve to bring him into this world. The child is not a byproduct of my failed marriage. The hospital room was quite lively. Many former colleagues from the company, business partners, and close friends came to visit me. Yet Tobias Jen, my husband in name, was conspicuously absent. Even to outsiders, neglecting a wife who had just suffered a miscarriage from a car accident would inevitably seem heartless. Finally, on the afternoon of the second day, I saw Tobias Jen. It was just financial news playing on his phone, with his ever-present assistant Ray Tyan by his side. Young and beautiful, just like I was when I accompanied him in starting his business. Standing quietly and gently beside him, I watched him speak confidently in front of the camera. A perfect match, complementing each other like a pair of jade ornaments. "Mr. Jen, do you have anything to say about securing this project or anyone you'd like to thank?" Tobias Jen turned his head slightly, exchanging a smile with Ray Tyan beside him. Of course, the success of Jen Group today wouldn't have been possible without Ray's constant support and encouragement by my side. Whether in work or daily life, she is the most important person in my heart. The reporter's gossipy curiosity remained undiminished as the camera turned to Ray Tyan. Ray Tyan held Tobias Jen's hand, blatantly displaying it under the lens. Their bodies pressed intimately together, and as the camera panned, Tobias Jen's hand was conspicuously bare of a wedding ring. While truly heartwarming, I will be eagerly awaiting good news from the two of you. Meanwhile, as one of the founders of Jen Group and Tobias Jen's legal wife, I was not even mentioned in his words. Left to watch their affection unfold on screen from a hospital bed. How ironic. Back when we were starting our business, I accompanied him delivering takeout, driving for DD, setting up street stalls, and working night markets. At that time, we would share a single plate of fried noodles with eggs. And Tobias Jen would always pick out the cilantro first, then give me the eggs to eat. I will never forget the sparkle in 21-year-old Tobias Jen's eyes as he pushed the remaining noodles around and told me, "Nora, I will always be good to you. When I have money, I'll help you pull out all the cilantro in the world." Back then, I never imagined that at 31, Tobias Jen would be holding another woman, saying she was the most important. Words spoken in love only hold meaning when love exists. Mrs. Chen noticed me staring blankly at the screen and walked over to take my phone, replacing it with a lawyer's business card. She poked my head in frustration, her tone tinged with reproach. "I told you before, you're just too straightforward. You poured your whole heart into him. Getting a divorce might be good for both you and him. Once you finish your postpartum rest, come with me to Japan for a hot spring bath. Consider it a way to unwind. He wronged you first, so make sure you get a fair share of the money in the divorce." The business card in my hand felt burning hot as I replied with a smile. "All right. I just never expected that Tobias Jen and I, after so many years together, would end up like this." After being discharged from the hospital and returning to the villa, I began packing my things to move out. Just as I was about to pack the last box, Tobias Jen suddenly came back. His surprised voice sounded behind me. "Nora, what are you up to again?" I turned around at the sound and glanced at his slightly disheveled attire. Just as I was about to say something, I noticed Tobias Jen's gaze was somewhat evasive. Pressing his temples, he spoke first as if trying to cover something up. "I really don't know what more you could possibly be unsatisfied with in our current life. Are you only going to be happy when we get divorced? It's me who's working hard outside, providing you with good food and a comfortable life now. Living in a big house, living like a noble woman. You don't have to work or do chores, yet every day you find reasons to make unreasonable demands. I said, "You've been calling me nonstop again. I've told you many times my work requires social engagements, and drinking with clients to discuss business is also exhausting. I don't want to come home only to see you giving me attitude. As my wife, can't you try to understand me a little?" Tobias Jen's preconceived anger left me momentarily at a loss for words. Being subjected to such baseless accusations would have made me argue fiercely with Tobias in the past. But now, I simply looked at him calmly and nodded earnestly. "I understand. Go upstairs and change your clothes. It's time to head to the company soon." Tobias froze in place, looking at me with a strange and complicated gaze. He had prepared himself for a fierce argument, even venting his anger on me in advance. But I didn't. I didn't even ask a single additional question. Tobias walked slowly, watching me as I climbed the stairs, turning back every few steps. By the time he changed his clothes and came downstairs, I had already packed most of my things. "Did Ray Tyan inform you about the divorce?" "I'm still a director of the company for now. I'll go to the office this afternoon. It's better to notify the board about the divorce in advance. During this time I'll move out. As for the property division related to the divorce, I'll have my lawyer contact you." My words made Tobias pause for a moment just as he opened his mouth to say something. The doorbell rang again. It was Ray Tyan. A young, beautiful face appeared at the door. I knew why Ray had come. She was the one who answered that call. So, of course, she wanted to see how far things had escalated after her instigation, and whether her position as Mrs. Jen could truly be secured. "You President Jen last night. Were you okay at home alone?" "President Jen got too happy and drank too much last night, insisting on clinging to me and refusing to come back here. I had no choice but to take him to my place. See, he even left his tie at my place without noticing, so I'm just returning it. By the way, whatever President Jen said yesterday was just drunken talk. Don't take it seriously. But since you're almost divorced now, you probably wouldn't mind, right?" Ray looked at me provocatively, deliberately saying ambiguous and provocative words to make me misunderstand. She didn't care at all. In fact, she couldn't wait for me to argue with her in front of Tobias like I used to. But I merely responded with a word of acknowledgement, even stepping aside to let Ray in, then considerately excused myself to leave, giving them space alone. "Don't mind me, I have things to attend to. I'll take my leave now." That afternoon, I went to the company under the name of Mrs. Since getting married, Tobias Jen had wanted me to focus on home life. I rarely visited the company anymore. So much so that apart from the longtime employees, most staff only knew Tobias Jen had a wife but had never actually seen me. Later, Tobias Jen had taken off his wedding ring at some point. Presumably by then, everyone in the company had assumed he was divorced. Now, with my sudden appearance, it was bound to spark gossip within the company. "Didn't Mr. Jen stay at Secretary Tyan's place last night? I thought he was already divorced. Then isn't Ray Tyan the mistress who got involved and climbed her way up through the bed?" The front desk and administrative staff were discussing quite loudly, not even noticing as I approached. I didn't pay much attention and turned to enter the elevator, heading straight to the meeting room. The board meeting went smoothly. I planned to handle the divorce matter discreetly, minimizing the impact on the company's stock price and transferring my shares to completely sever ties with the Jen family. Just as the meeting was concluding, Director Sue suddenly spoke up. "Let's all have a meal together, the board members. After all, we've worked together for so many years. I was the first investor Ray brought in. Now that Ray won't be around anymore, I must say I'll feel rather unaccustomed. I know a hotel with excellent food. Coincidentally, my wife just landed and has been saying she'd like to talk with you. I'll call her right away." Of course, Mr. Sue's face is something both Tobias Jen and I would naturally honor. However, Ray Tyan, who was closely following Tobias Jen, tugged at his sleeve, her eyes pleading as she looked at him. It was clear that Ray Tyan really wanted Tobias Jen to take her along. In such a setting, Ray Tyan, as a secretary, would find herself in an awkward position. And with me, his ex-wife, present, there's no guarantee I wouldn't make things difficult for his poor little secretary. Chances are she won't be going. Tobias Jen turned his head away, just about to brush off Ray Tyan's hand, and softly offered a few apologetic words of comfort. But I suddenly spoke up, considerate enough to even come up with an excuse for Tobias Jen. All right then. Secretary Tyan can join us. It's just about meal time and we're all familiar with each other anyway. Tobias Jen instinctively thought I intended to make things difficult for Ray Tyan at the dinner table and coldly warned me in a low voice. Norway, we're about to get divorced. Don't make trouble. Almost all the board members are here today. At worst, Ree won't attend. If you make a scene like a shrew at the dinner, do you want everyone to laugh at me? You may not care about face, but I do. I shook my head with a smile, somewhat unable to understand what he was thinking. It's just a meal. I won't make things difficult for her. Without giving him another glance, I smiled and accompanied Chairman Sue as we walked away. When ordering at the table, the waiter casually asked, "Sir, do you have any dietary restrictions like onions, ginger, or garlic?" Tobias Jen answered quickly, almost without hesitation. "I eat everything. No dietary restrictions." I remembered the cilantro that was personally picked out from the egg-fried noodles back then. Tobias Jen really forgot everything thoroughly. It was just Mrs. Chin who spoke up from the side, glancing sideways at Tobias Jen and adding, "I don't eat cilantro." I remember Nora doesn't eat cilantro. I gave Mrs. Chin a grateful smile. I didn't really mind. It was just a social meal. At worst, I could simply avoid reaching for that dish. There was no need to embarrass Tobias Jen over such a trivial matter. Perhaps because of this incident, Tobias Jen seemed somewhat guilty. Throughout the meal, his gaze kept drifting furtively in my direction. He also appeared distracted when responding to Ray Tyan's attempts at conversation, and when she served him food until Mrs. Sue personally served me a bowl of chicken soup. "I heard from our little girl at the hospital last time that you're pregnant. Congratulations. Why are you eating so little? You're eating for two now. You need more nutrition. The chickens here are all free-range black-bone chickens, the most nourishing kind." I was taken aback for a moment. The mere thought of that unborn child inevitably stirs up a pain as fine and sharp as needle pricks in my heart. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Chairman Sue's expression had changed beside me. Presumably, Madame Sue had just returned from her overseas trip, and might not yet be fully aware of my current situation. Madame Sue meant well and was genuinely concerned about me. I didn't blame her. With a faint smile, I softly thanked her and accepted the bowl of chicken soup. Tobias Jen's cup toppled over, the glass making a sharp clinking sound. His expression was a mix of joy and shock. Even Ray Tyan beside him grew tense. Frowning deeply, his gaze shifted from Madame Sue to me. "You're pregnant." The dining table fell into silence as if no one knew how to break the ice. "Didn't you know? Nora had a car accident last week and miscarried. The baby didn't make it. Let's eat." Under Tobias Jen's furious glare, I put an end to further discussion on the topic. The child is already gone. There's no point in Tobias Jen talking anymore about it. Seeing my cold expression, Tobias Jen suddenly stood up, muttered an apology to the others at the table, and pulled me outside. I hadn't planned to hide it from him, and I knew this day of reckoning would come eventually. "Why didn't you tell me?" When Tobias Jen turned to face me, I noticed his eyes were already red. I scoffed. What was this supposed to mean? Crocodile tears. I didn't mind driving the knife deeper into Tobias Jen's heart. "I called you so many times from the hospital that day. You had blocked my number so you didn't answer. You picked up when I called back the next day. But what were you doing with Ray Tyan then? Tobias Jen, what are you crying about? Are you sad for this child? But didn't you tell Ray Tyan to have another one for you? Didn't you say you only wanted children from her?" Tobias Jen choked up, his voice trembling as he asked me. "That was all drunken talk." "I'm sorry. I do. You hate me." Tobias Jen's casual apology ignited the long-suppressed anger in my heart. I raised my arm high and slapped him hard across the face. "This slap is for my child. It was you who tearfully told me when we got married that we would have a home and family from then on. My child and I searched for you in the pouring rain, only to find you entangled with another woman. Do you know that because there was no family member present, the nurse had to hold my hand to sign the informed consent for the induced abortion? Tobias Jen, what right do you have to cry? After all these years with you, watching you gradually become the person you are now. Tobias Jen, I'm truly exhausted." I took a deep breath and turned to leave. My steps faltered as Tobias Jen grabbed my sleeve. No, we don't have to get divorced. I'll take care of you from now on. I turned my head and forcefully shook off Tobias Jen's hand. What is this compensation? Charity or guilt? If you really feel guilty, just give me more money in the divorce settlement. Actually, when love is gone, many things become much easier to handle. The next day, after signing the divorce agreement, I discussed the division of assets with Tobias Jen alongside my lawyer. A long conference table brutally severed the 14 years between Tobias Jen and me. First, your side was at fault during the marriage. According to news media reports and your own tacit admission, Mr. Jen, you had an inappropriate relationship with Ray Tyan, the company's internal secretary. Second, my client, Ms. Nora, co-founded the company with you, and your marital relationship lasted for 10 years. To summarize, this is the property division plan we have drafted. When the lawyer handed over the agreement, Tobias Jen seemed dazed and only murmured, 10 years. It was clear that Tobias Jen had a lot on his mind, but I truly didn't have time to indulge his melancholy. I just wanted to be free. I tapped the table to bring his thoughts back to the present. Take a look at the contract. Tobias Jen snapped out of his thoughts and looked up at me. I couldn't quite decipher the complexity in his gaze. It was as if he was looking at me, yet also at the version of me from 10 years ago. With a bitter laugh, he pulled out a pen and swiftly signed his name. The lawyer beside him seemed about to say more, but Tobias Jen simply uttered, "Sorry, this is what I owe you." I didn't expect things to be resolved so straightforwardly. When I pushed open the conference room door, Ray Tyan had already been waiting for a long time. It seemed she truly couldn't wait to take her place. Now it seems she's gotten her wish. Just like countless times before, she walked toward Tobias Jen with a smile, casting a victorious, mocking glance at me. Linking arms with Tobias Jen, she cooed, "It's over now, right? Once the divorce cooling-off period ends, let's have a grand wedding." Okay. Even when I was furious, Tobias Jen never shied away from Ray Tyan's closeness in the past. Now, however, he awkwardly pulled his hand away from Ray Tyan and looked at me, saying, "If you ever need help in the future, don't hesitate to tell me." My mocking expression was unmistakable as I snapped back at Tobias Jen. "If I need help, I'll call 110 myself. The police will arrive faster than you. Tobias Jen is a husband. You're truly useless." I flew to Japan, accepting Mrs. Chen's invitation. I planned to relax and wait for the end of the divorce cooling-off period. Having been Mrs. Jen for so many years, the tension in my heart never eased. The larger the company grew, the more there was to consider. There was also the social aspect, managing relationships with the wives of the upper-class circle. Even after stepping back into domestic life, clashes and conflicts with Tobias Jen over investments and development directions were inevitable. It seemed that after a particularly heated argument sparked by my veto of an investment direction, Tobias Jen finally backed down. But seeing his foul mood, I decided to personally go to the company to soothe him. I watched coldly as Ray Tyan flirted and chatted with him, the two standing close, their breaths mingling. Her eyes sparkled with admiration and adoration, just like mine once had. I still couldn't hold back. I rushed forward and slapped Ray Tyan. I clearly remember Tobias Jen firmly shielding her in his arms, his cold expression mercilessly accusing me. "Nora, isn't it enough for you to go crazy at home? Do you want to cause a scene at the company too? She's just my secretary. We were only discussing that rejected proposal. She wouldn't ignore all my efforts no matter what I say. Unlike you, that's why we had a slightly more pleasant conversation. Nora, can't you be more generous?" From then on, conflicts kept leaking out like water from a cracked jar. Tobias Jen and Ray Tyan grew closer and closer. I became like a cornered beast, a resentful woman, unable to seek justice, storming into Tobias Jen's office in a complete meltdown. The entire top-floor executive offices probably heard the commotion. Tobias Jen was eerily calm at that moment, silently closing the door behind him. He dragged me in front of the mirror, forcing me to face my reflection, and said coldly, "Nora, look at yourself right now. This is a company, yet you're acting like a shrew making a scene. Do you think you still resemble Mrs. Jen in the slightest? You've become someone I don't recognize at all. Let's get a divorce." As I walked away in despair, I happened to bump into Ray Tyan, who was bringing food to Tobias Jen. Her eyes sparkling, a smile on her lips, She eagerly rushed toward him. Intimately and thoughtfully, she lifted the lid of the food container for him, holding chopsticks as they chatted about trivial matters at the company. Just like that year when Tobias, Jen, and I squatted on the concrete floor, discussing what goods to stock up for the night market to sell better the next day. In that instant, I clearly realized that times had changed and things were different now. Comfortable days passed by in a leisurely manner for nearly a month. Here, ginger tea, it helps ward off the cold. What are you thinking about? You seem so lost in thought. Mrs. Chin saw me soaking in the hot spring without saying a word, patted my shoulder, and handed me a cup of ginger tea. I smiled without speaking and shook my head in silence. Noticing my ambiguous expression, Mrs. Chin started chatting. Do you know about the recent incident at the company? I took a sip of tea and looked at Mrs. Chin, asked, What's the matter? I've barely kept up with news from back home since coming here. Mrs. Chin leaned in with a gleeful expression and said, It's about that affair where Ray Tyan became the mistress who got promoted to wife. Remember when they gave that interview to the financial news outlet? All lovey-dovey in the video? Now it's been exposed that she was the other woman who got the upper hand, abandoning the faithful first wife. Even the footage of your car accident that day has been dug up. The PR department's phones are practically smoking from all the calls. Who in the circle actually respects her? Just the other day at the banquet, Mrs. Su splashed a glass of red wine on her, saying the collection wasn't to be touched by dirty hands. Ray Tyan was so furious she trembled all over. At the company, she's just a secretary with no real power. People talk behind her back all the time. I suspect it was done by a competitor. The online backlash is huge with waves of criticism. The company's stock dropped 2 points that very day. I bet it's still falling now. Ray Tyan's phone and email must be flooded with hate lately. Wasn't Ray Tyan pushing for marriage all along? Well, now with this scandal, the board, who already opposed it, has the perfect excuse. If they actually went through with it, the company's reputation would be ruined. I nodded, thinking she deserved it. But the assets have been mostly divided up, so there's no way the fallout could land on me, though it should stop today. Tobias Jen announced a collaboration with OPCI, saying they're establishing a subsidiary focused on biopharmaceuticals combined with artificial intelligence. It's quite a gimmick, and the media is uniformly touting it as promising. However, the specific proposal hasn't been released yet. It suddenly dawned on me. Wasn't this the exact investment proposal I had vetoed before? He quickly pressed down on Mrs. Chen's hand and advised in a low voice, Don't invest. This project has issues. Is it a problem with OPCI company? I set the teacup aside and continued following Mrs. Chen's line of questioning. Yes, I once vetoed this proposal. OPCI is a leader in the biopharmaceutical industry in the US with proprietary patents. From a profit perspective, there's absolutely no need to choose GenCorp as a partner to share the market. I have some information but not enough to serve as evidence. I suspect the additives in OPCI's products are non-compliant, at least not in line with China's market regulations. Otherwise, there would be no reason to collaborate with a local Chinese company. Moreover, the proposal only required Gen Corporation to provide facilities and financial support, with no direct connection to their core business in artificial intelligence. Such requirements could easily be met by other, more reputable companies with better platforms. How could OPCI possibly bring such a massive proposal to share such a big pie the very next week? Simply because of personal charm and the impression that Tobias Jen seemed like a decent person during a conversation at a cocktail party. Mrs. Chin nodded thoughtfully. Yes, the company has been making major moves recently. Tobias Jen almost seems intent on investing half the company into this project. He previously bought shares from you at a high price and now effectively holds absolute decision-making power over the company by default. I straightened up from the hot soup, preparing to leave. It's best to have a backup plan. You can privately contact a professional manager and prepare to sell your shares. If the Jen family encounters problems, it will be absolutely irreparable. Book the tickets. This matter can't be delayed. We need to return. If our competitors find out, it won't just be a matter of taking a small loss anymore. Mrs. Chin also became serious after hearing my words. This matter truly cannot be delayed. It's about time too. Once the divorce cooling-off period ends, I will officially terminate my marital relationship with Tobias Jen. On the day I officially received the divorce certificate, I saw Tobias Jen again. He looked quite spirited, no doubt because the OPCI project had been going well for him lately. However, his expression dimmed noticeably when his gaze landed on me. I nodded at him in acknowledgement. "Let's go." Tobias Jen bit his lip. His expression conflicted. "I saw the video from that day on the news. Have you been recovering well lately? I noticed you lost a lot of blood back then and seemed barely conscious. I truly regret not answering that call. If I had been willing to talk things through with you, whether it was you or that child, perhaps no one would have gotten hurt. Maybe we should take some more time to cool off." I froze for a moment before realizing what he meant. Shaking my head, I pushed the divorce papers toward Tobias Jen. "There's no need for that. Just sign it." Tobias Jen's hand trembled as he held the pen, reminding me of when I signed that informed consent form for the induced abortion. Just the same, shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Suddenly, I noticed Ray Tyan was actually absent from today's occasion. At least it gave me some peace and quiet. I really don't want to give her even the slightest bit of courtesy. The moment I received the divorce certificate, it felt like cutting out a malignant tumor that had been growing in my body for years. I only felt relief. As I was about to leave, I still couldn't shake my concern for Genture, the company I had co-founded with my own hands. I turned back and mentioned it to Tobias Jen. "That OPIC project, you ended up pushing it through after all. I remember telling you more than once that this project carries certain risks." No sooner had I finished speaking than I saw Ray Tyan clattering toward us in her high heels. It turns out it wasn't about giving me peace, just that she was late. "You're not even part of Gen Corporation anymore. What right do you have to boss people around? Let me tell you, it's your own lack of capability." I personally introduced the OPIC project to Tobias Jen. The vice president on the other side was willing to give Gen Corporation extra consideration only because of my alumni connection with him and the fact that we share the same mentor. Nor don't think that just because you've been a housewife for too long and have no skills of your own, you can go around sabotaging other people's projects. Seeing that Tobias Jen and I had obtained our divorce certificate, Ray Tyan spoke with much more confidence. Tobias Jen scolded Ray Tyan in a low voice before turning to me. "I'm sorry she's been too busy with work lately," and spoke without thinking. I apologize on her behalf. However, the OPIC project was personally overseen and researched by Ray. "I believe there shouldn't be any issues, Nora. Perhaps you were just being overly cautious back then. You can't save those who are hellbent on destruction. Let go of the savior complex and respect others' fate. Anyway, the money is already in hand, so let them run the company however they please." I nodded somewhat perfunctorily and said, "That's great. I'll take my leave now." Ray Tyan is clearly not one to stay quiet, boldly putting an arm around Tobias Jen right in front of me to flaunt their relationship. "Take care. And when Tobias Jen and I get married, you must come as a senior guest to celebrate with us." Tobias Jen's face darkened instantly, and he immediately pushed Ray Tyan away. "What's wrong with you? Didn't I tell you that the public opinion about us isn't good right now and we need to keep a low profile? Also, didn't I ask you not to come yesterday? Why did you come again?" "Tobias Jen, I was just worried she might bother you. Now that you're divorced, the two of you are strangers with no connection. You really shouldn't meet with her anymore." Tobias Jen's tone grew even more impatient. "Raiden, can you stop being so unreasonable? She is my ex-wife and we once had a child together. How could we possibly be strangers? If you're so free, why don't you check on the progress of OPIC or go have afternoon tea with those ladies or something? You know very well that those ladies are all thinking about Norwich. They say it's disgraceful for me to be with you, look down on me and make things difficult for me. I really don't want to keep getting the cold shoulder anymore." I had no time to listen to Tobias Jen and Ray Tyan argue, so I turned and walked away. Ray Tyan is just the next version of me. No sooner had I walked away than Mrs. Chen's call came through. A sudden sense of foreboding rose in me as I swiped to answer. "How did it go?" Her voice on the other end carried the flustered tone of someone who'd narrowly escaped disaster. "Good thing I went in person just as you said. Their medications were indeed problematic. The over-the-counter painkillers they primarily sell contain large amounts of banned substances." My heart sank as I pressed further. "What is it?" "An excessive dose of stimulants, chlorotriphenylphenylene, can be fatal. Before I could process this, Mrs. Chin dropped another bombshell. The parent company at OPIC in the US has run into trouble. Excessive stimulants have already caused 2 deaths, but the families were paid off to keep quiet. It's also because the market there is unsafe that they're now eyeing our domestic market. I've already sold off most of my shares and secretly sent someone to inform Madame Sue. I doubt this can be kept under wraps for much longer. Most of the drugs have already hit the market. It'll blow up in at most half a month. But before that, I need to vent some anger for you first. The next day, as soon as Madame Chin returned from the US, Ray Tian begged to see her. When I rushed over, I finally understood what Madame Chin meant on the phone about venting anger for me. Please, you must not withdraw your investment at this time. If word gets out, the whole deal will collapse. The profit margin on these drugs is 500%, and they're selling extremely well. I guarantee it. I'll split the earnings with you 50-50. If that's not acceptable, you take 70, I'll take 30. Mrs. Chin saw me arrive and beckoned me over, saying, Nora, over here. I've told you, Rayon, instead of begging me, you'd better beg Nora. I'm not the only one who knows about this. She vetoed that proposal precisely because of this. Too bad you're just an idiot. Ray Tian bit her lower lip, not daring to say anything more, even as she was being scolded to her face. She turned to me with an ingratiating smile. President Tu is here. Try the tea I just brewed. Now I understand why Ray Tian managed to win Tobias Jin's favor. I thought you were busy with wedding preparations. What? You still have time to invite me and Mrs. Chin for tea today? I've been waiting for your invitation. You don't look well. What's wrong? Another argument? Ray Tian blushed at my words, but still retorted stubbornly. No, it's not about that. It's about OPIC. I was hoping you and Mrs. Chin could help. I can't help. You're so close to the vice president over there, and you're the one who secured this project for Tobias Jin. When the time comes, you'll split the profits together, and if there's trouble, you'll share the sell too, won't you? Ray Tian turned pale with fear at my words. Her knees suddenly gave way and she knelt on the ground, clutching the hem of my clothes as she pleaded. Please, you can't let this get out. Most of the drugs have already been sold. With sales like this, I'll definitely go to jail. It was only because my senior said it was discreet, profitable, and that such a small dosage wouldn't cause any problems that I... President, you built Gensher from the ground up. Surely you can't bear to see it collapse like this. It was my fault for being blinded by greed. I saw how young and handsome President Jin was. So much better looking than those pot-bellied men. And that's why I interfered in your marriage. Otherwise, with my youth, beauty, and decent education, I could have found any handsome man I wanted. I raised an eyebrow and tightened my grip on the phone in my hand, signaling Ray Tian to continue. Seeing that my expression wasn't too bad, Ray Tian grew bolder and seized the opportunity to push further. President Tu, if you could just be merciful and let this go. I promise to stay far away from Tobias Jin. I don't want to get burned either. But could you perhaps give me some compensation for breaking up? Hearing Ray Tian's words, I almost wanted to laugh. You married Tobias Jin first and then divorce him. By then, not to mention the breakup fee, you'll have even your retirement money all earned by yourself. Isn't that what you're here for? Why come begging for my advice now? Tobias Jin, for some reason, just refuses to marry me no matter what. I don't want to waste my youth on him until I'm a haggard old woman. Mr. Tu, don't worry. Just promise me and I'll fly abroad tomorrow. I nodded with amusement and motioned for Ray Tian to look behind her. Did you hear that, Tobias? Jen Forbes says you're worth $5 billion, but in your little secretary's eyes, you're only worth 20 million RMB, not even a fraction of my divorce settlement. Tobias Jin couldn't have grown the Jin family business to its current scale by being a complete fool. He probably uncovered something from OPEC's internal records back home. And with both Madame Chin and Director Su withdrawing their investments, that's why he came to me. As soon as Madame Chin mentioned Ray Tian was planning to sacrifice the pawn to save the king, I brought Tobias Jin along to see what his precious little secretary was really up to. Tobias Jin had clearly been listening to everything from the private room at the back, his face dark with anger as he strode over. Did you know about the project's issues all along? Ray Tian never expected to see Tobias Jin here. She froze in place, stunned for 2 seconds before snapping back to reality and defending herself. I didn't know anything, Tobias Jin. It was Norak who paid me to break up with you. A slap sent Ray Tyan into complete daze. I really didn't expect you. I thought you were sincere. You're just disgusting. I've already called the police. You can explain this matter to them yourself. I've recalled the drug sales. I don't want to go to jail. At the mention of calling the police, Ray Tyan immediately stood up, grabbing Tobias Jen's tie and demanding, "You're calling the police on me? How dare you call the police on me? Tobias Jen, let me tell you, do you think you'll be fine if I go down? At worst, we'll go to jail together. Do you think you can walk away unscathed? Once the drugs are recalled, the funding chain will collapse. The entire Jen family will be dragged down. By then, both you and I will be penniless. Tobias Jen, have you lost your damn mind? If I'd known it would come to this, I might as well have hooked up with a sugar daddy. You're just a worthless piece of trash." Ray Tyan was furious, clearly having lost the patience to keep up the act. She tore off her gentle and understanding facade in front of Tobias Jen, revealing the greedy and selfish truth beneath. The disgust and disappointment in Tobias Jen's eyes were genuine, mixed with the anger of being deceived. He pushed Ray Tyan away and slapped her across the face. Ray Tyan no longer bothered to pretend either. She retaliated in pain, and the two immediately began to brawl. The love and sweetness displayed in the media back then were still vivid in memory. Yet now they had descended into such a state. I couldn't be bothered to watch the commotion anymore. After calling the police, I pulled Mrs. Chin away and left. That same day, I saw the news about Tobias Jen and Ray Tyan's public spat in the social section. What the hell do you think you are? If it weren't for your money, would I even look at you? In a few years you'll reek of old age, yet you dare lay hands on me. Disgusting. Ray, if you hadn't pretended to be drunk, barged into my room and stripped off your clothes back then I had a wife and family, how would I have ended up with you? What? Now that you're looking down on your benefactor? If money can buy you, what's with the act of playing hard to get? Aren't you, Tobias Jen, just obsessed with this that I am? You abandoned your wife at home. Didn't she try to talk sense into you? But you wouldn't listen. You only wanted to hear what I had to say. Now that things have gone wrong, you're trying to pin the blame on me, coward. The two hurled insults furiously, and within moments they were brawling again, only calming down after the furious police officers handcuffed them. The public uproar had already sent the company's stock prices plummeting, and before the storm could settle, the announcement of a drug recall pushed Gen Corp to declare an immediate delisting. Within days, the company announced it had entered bankruptcy proceedings, compensating some consumers who have used the medication. The company's financial shortfall, creditors' demands, one expense after another is burning through money. Even mortgaging all the properties and cars under Tobias Jen's name couldn't cover this financial hole. The once illustrious Tobias Jen has now, just as Ray Tyan said, become a complete and utter pauper. However, Ray Tyan isn't faring any better. After leaving the police station, she immediately transferred the money to an overseas account, grabbed her passport, and prepared to continue her carefree life abroad, only to be detained at the airport. Tobias Jen and Ray Tyan are currently being prosecuted as the masterminds behind economic crimes and the alleged production and sale of toxic and harmful food. According to the lawyer who handled my divorce, Tobias Jen is expected to be sentenced to 3 to 5 years, while Ray Tyan, who attempted to flee and is one of the masterminds, could face 7 or 8 years. I can only sigh at the irony. Going to prison together might as well be the fulfillment of their love. 7 years later, when I returned to my alma mater with my child, the phone in my hand was still carrying Mrs. Chen's endless gossip. Nora Ray Tyan is dead. Dead? Oh, that woman, she had just gotten out of prison when she hooked up with President Yen before she could even secure her position. Mrs. Yen found out, their family has a lot of influence in Myanmar. I heard they beat him with electric batons in the water prison, and then sold him to the red light district. Who knows how he died? Daring to mess with Mr. Yen, he's over 60 years old. And with Mrs. Yen's temper, Ray Tyan got what she deserved. She's already been to prison and still hasn't learned her lesson. Watching my daughter run ahead, I grew anxious and hurried to catch up with her. Judge, slow down. It's crowded here. Be careful not to fall or bump into anyone. The kid was overjoyed as soon as she returned to the country. I'll keep an eye on her for now. Mrs. Chin, I'll hang up first and we can talk more when we meet tomorrow. Ja, who lives abroad, was very intrigued by the night market stalls back home. She dashed straight ahead without hesitation, and I had no choice but to quickly follow her until we stopped in front of a vendor. Looking up again after so many years, I saw Tobias Jen at the night market stall by the school gate. His messy hair, sallow and dark face, paired with his now overweight and out-of-shape figure. He was squatting in front of the stall, buying toys that children love, and stealing a moment to eat a bowl of fried noodles with eggs. Their eyes met and Tobias Jen's eyes widened. He spoke somewhat awkwardly. "Long time no see. I heard you went abroad. What happened back then was my fault. Because of Ray Tyan we lost our child, got divorced, and even the Jen family business collapsed. When I set up my stall here, I often thought of you and our past. All these years I've been constantly reminiscing about our history together. Back then we were poor, but we were so happy. Do you think we still have any chance to?" Tears welled up in Tobias Jen's eyes. Judy ran closer, tugged at my sleeve and said, "Mom, I'm hungry. When is Dad coming to pick me up?" Tobias Jen stared at the child momentarily, stunned. "Do you have children?" I took over the conversation and nodded, saying, "Yes, I'm married. This is my daughter, Judia." Tobias Jen's words stuck in his throat as he tried to say something. Yuda pointed behind them and shouted, "Mom, Dad is here." My husband stood by the car holding a bouquet of roses, waving at me from a distance. I couldn't help but smile, then turn my gaze to Tobias Jen. Impossible. Absolutely impossible in this lifetime. I'm very happy now. My husband is Saul, the Russian businessman who once struck up a conversation with me at a cocktail party. You've met him before. I'm ready to take Gita far away. As I left, I turned back with a smile and said to him, if the accident hadn't happened back then, our child would be older than Gita now. I could see the pain and struggle in Tobias Jen's eyes growing more intense. This is my final revenge on Tobias Jen. A thorn that can never be pulled out, forever haunting, forever aching. He might still set up his street stall at the night market for a long time, eating countless plates of fried noodles with eggs. But there will never again be a 21-year-old Norichu by his side, chatting away and picking out the cilantro for him. Tobias Jen will forever be a damp, crumpled bed sheet in the rainy season. Unable to stretch out, unable to dry, unable to be wrung of water, quietly left in the corner to mold and rot. Daddy, why do you say Mommy is also a baby and I'm a baby too? Saul placed the rose on the car hood, smiling as he patted Gita's head with one hand and pulled me into his embrace with the other. Because Mommy is also the person Daddy loves the most. You're both Daddy's babies. I returned the hug and replied, I love you. Saul smiled with a hint of childishness. I love you more.